Okay, so let's begin today. We have, I was asking anyone has got any questions so far? Okay, we are in the third modules. We moved from understanding gender concepts, where we looked in terms of the building blocks of gender inequality. And we looked in terms of women's rights as human rights. And now we are in a very important module, which is on power. So we are locating power. If you have looked in terms of gender inequality and the denial of women their human rights, power plays a very, very significant role. So therefore, this module is locating in terms how power influences the gender inequality. So it's an understanding power as within the social change that we are talking. Power means differently for different people in different contexts, but we are here concerned with power that is more in terms of the social power that influences the inequalities and discrimination in the society. Let me share and then let's see what is your understanding on power. Anyone? What do you, when you hear about power, what comes to you?
May I go, Prof?
Yes, please. Yes, Caroline.
Yes, I would think about authority when I think power.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Very good, Caroline. It's, you see it as an authority. Yeah. Anyone else? Shirley?
Influence.
Influence. Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry.
Yes, Helena.
Hello. To me, power means being able to speak up and to take up space.
Yeah, to speak up and take space. Very good. Thank you. I think let's move on in terms of can you see the screen? Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's, I think we have got Caroline, Shirley, and Helena. Three people have got three different dimensions of power. One is authority, influence, and then something that in terms of which you can speak up and then take the spaces. So very well said. So therefore, the power is the capacity of an individual to influence. Influence what? Influence the beliefs, behavior, and even the decisions of others. So we need to look at in terms of power from that point of view. How does one exercise power to influence other people? We'll come to in terms of authority and then the space afterward, because you would use how to do it. So therefore, when you look at, there are always, when there is a power in operation, there are two individuals or two groups of individuals. One who influence it, the other one who is influenced by it. So therefore, there is one individual or a group of individuals who make a choice and then they influence that choice on others. So therefore, there are other individuals or a group of individuals who will be affected by it. there are two aspects that we need to look at in terms of when does this happen? When does this influencing others by an individual happens is when there is an interdependent relationship between the two. Is it, maybe it is between wife and husband, between one individual and another. There is an interdependent relationship and one influences the other one. The second one that we need to look at in terms of it's also influenced by the external factors, and there is some agreement between the two. It could be by institution of marriage, it could be my institution of the leadership or authority that you may have. So therefore, a power can be influenced between two individuals when there is an interdependent relationship, when there is a subtle agreement in terms of using that power. Let's move in terms of the theoretical constructs of power. Helena, you have something to share? You want to comment?
Sorry, I just didn't take.
Okay. Okay. So, as I said, the concept of power is proposed by many people, but I am using here more from a social change point of view. Physicists define power in different ways, so the other people have defined it. So from a social change point of view, how does power influences social change? There are four key theories that has explained power from different contexts. So the first one that comes is in terms of Gramsci. Gramsci is an Italian philosopher who has used power as that is something that is projected through cultural hegemony. That's why we need to come to culture. I think there are, in the post, many people have said about how the inequalities exist between women and men. So the culture is a medium through which the power is exercised, and it uses either coercion or fear or consent. So it looks in terms of if you don't do it, what would be the consequence? So treating in terms of something that is abnormal and then meeting with the punishment or violence. So therefore, he looks in terms of, Gramsci looks into power from the point of the cultural hegemony, which projects power through use of force, use of coercion, fear and consent. And it recognizes as a part of in terms of how to overcome this cultural hegemony or hegemonic culture. He looks in terms of organic intellectuals. See, organic intellectuals are those who are from within the community, who have resilience to look at the issues, challenges, and they can make an influence in terms of making a change. So when we are looking in terms of social change, so the power that Gramsci says is, it is hegemonic culture, but we need to harness people who are within the community, who are intellectual in terms of they understand the issues deeper, and they can also look at how to overcome those challenges. The second theory is by Karl Marx, and he looks in terms of the dominant ideas of economic class, which becomes the dominant. So the ideas of the ruling class, which become dominant in terms of exercising it over the others. So there are two things which we need to keep in mind, that the power is inherently exploitative, because it has within this the exploitative nature. How you express, we come to, but by nature, what Karl Marx says is, when someone who is holding power through the economic resources, they can exploit, they use that power to exploit it. And inevitably, there is a conflict, because when you exercise, when it's exploitative, that is why we need to look at proletariat and bourgeois. Bourgeois can accept for some time this exploitative power, but they will revolt. So there will be a conflict. So you cannot have a constant power in terms of exploitative power. So while Gramsci looked at as a culture, the Karl Marx looks more from an economic power, and then their ideas which are more exploitative. The third is Weber, Max Weber, where I think what Shirley was, where Caroline was saying, he looked in terms of power as an authoritative in terms of somebody who can exercise it as a legitimate act over others, despite others not accepting it. So in terms of an act within a relationship, as a legitimate act based on one's own position, despite resistance by others. So therefore, we need to look at in terms of going from that power is seen theoretically as a hegemonic culture which uses coercion. The second one, economic power, which influences exploitative dominant ideas. Power as authority, as a legitimate authority, despite resistance. The fourth one is Foucault, who looks in terms of power and knowledge. So people which is closely linked to what Weber was talking about, dominant ideas. So persons who have got a higher knowledge, they hold power, and then he looks in terms of power not as one static thing, but he said it is dispersed, it is pervasive, and it's controlled through social institutions. So he brought into account the nature of power, which is dynamic, which is dispersed and pervasive everywhere. And then he also looked in terms of the role of social institutions. So these four theories, which would help us to look at how the power is constructed in society. Therefore, what is the basics when these four people have said? One, they said that the power exists in social relationships. As I said, we are looking at power more from a societal point of view. Therefore, power exists when there is a social relationship. When there is no relationship, it doesn't operate through economic transactions. So therefore, one, in terms of there is a social relationship, the other one, there is transaction, economic, social, or political transaction. So therefore, it is looked more in terms of dynamic and is shaped by institutions and defined by domination and subjection. So therefore, this is what we need to look at in terms of basic is, it's when we refer to power, it contains relationship, it contains transactions, and it is dynamic, and the institution play a role. And we always find when there is a power, there is someone who is dominating, and there is someone who is being affected, which is a subordination. The second one that we need to look at, power is a means to make actions. So it can constrain or it can also promote. So it is therefore, power is seen more as a capacity. Capacity, that's where Helena was saying in terms of speak up, take up space. So it is a capacity to do it. So the power is seen is some capacity of individual or a group of individuals to take spaces, to express themselves, to challenge. That's what we call as a capacity. That capacity is also referred to agency. So when we talk about in a social change, we talk about agency of people, people's capacity to change, people's power to change. The last one, which is very, very important that we need to look at, is that power is inherent in everyone. So it's people may not exercise it, but all individuals, male, female, other gender, anyone has power. So we need to look at it in terms of power by itself is neutral, but how you express it makes it whether it is positive or negative. So these are basic, I think we need to look at in terms of take the theories that we have looked from Gramsci, Marx, Weber, and Foucault. Look at these basic elements, basic constituents that the power has got. To look at in terms of how do we understand this power. Keep these two things in mind, that power is fluid and infinite. So therefore, when people are saying in terms of it is dynamic, so therefore it is not static. It doesn't remain in one individual with one place in one context. That's why it is said it is dispersed, it is pervasive, it exists everywhere. And exists everywhere, so therefore it is used, it can be used, it can be shared by individuals, or it can also be distributed. So this is opposite to, there are others who propose or who believe that power is static, it is limited, held by certain individuals. So these are two opposing paradigms, and we will look at both these paradigms, the role in the gender equality. The other one, when we talk about power, there is always someone who gains power at the cost of others, who loses power. So therefore, when there is a power sharing, power distribution, there is always a conflict, a struggle between people who are holding power to share and distribute with others. The third one we need to look at, we are not moving in terms of controlling power. We are looking that the power is used more for a mutual benefit and societal good. Lastly, we need to look at power as an organic one. Organic is, it is inherent in individuals, in groups, with interdependent relationships. So therefore, it is constantly realigning, because relationships are not constant. They keep changing. You get to new people, new relationships, new group formations. So therefore, you realign yourself in terms of interdependency with the individuals or groups. So given this theoretical construct, basic elements and the understanding of power, we have to look at now, how is this power expressed? Power is expressed in 4 different ways. As I said, power by itself is neutral. It is not either positive or negative, but how you express it, how you use it becomes whether it is positive or negative. So we will go into each of these 4 forms of expressions of power. The first is in terms of the power over, which is you find everywhere. When we talk about power, power is always seen is somebody exercising power over others. So this is built on, so whenever there is a power over, there is always a force, a coercion, a repression, a domination. So it believes in, so therefore it believes that someone can hold this power constantly over others in terms of influence one's decision over the other people. So power over, we need to look, why do we need to look at power over in a societal context is power over is always perpetuating the inequality, discrimination. So by denying rights, by denying resources to others. So therefore, it's difficult to see it. It's only in terms of how you manifest this power over. Therefore, you find this power over everywhere, and when it is shown either through violence, or through exclusion, or through a process of denials. So therefore, power over, we need to look at in terms of it contains within it the coercion and fear. The second one we need to look at, power over is always reflect the inequality and injustice. The third one we need to look at that you only need to see when it is manifested. Therefore, we need to look at in terms of the sources of power that is exercising power over, the reasons, the causes that it's making. Therefore, let's look at in terms of the other one is power two. Power two is a capacity to do it. So it's more in terms of how do you exercise this. That's where when you go back in terms of the basic second element it is talking about, that is a capacity or agency. So everyone can use power to bring new possibilities. Something new, they can try something to get goals. It opens up new possibilities. So one, you recognize your power if you can exercise that. Power to challenge it, power to make difference. So it's a dynamic, and it looks in terms of how each individual exercises. So we are moving from that where power over is a domination, power two is individuals exercising of their power to make a difference, explore possibilities, institute actions. The third one is in terms of power within. This goes into when we said power is inherent in everyone. So therefore, unfortunately, what happens is it's most often unrecognized. So that you find in terms of people who are holding power, and there are people who are powerless. So it could be women, it could be one community or one group of individuals. So although the people in that powerless do have power within them, they do not recognize and they do not exercise that power to make a difference, to explore possibilities. So it's if all our women's empowerment or all empowerment measures deal with this in terms of how to facilitate. First, how to make them aware that they have power. The second one, help them to exercise that power too. So therefore, it's a positive, and it's and empowering, because it empowers people. That more you feel that you have power to do something, it empowers individuals or a group of individuals. How do they gain? When they exercise their power too, when they find that there are results that are coming, when they are exercising or exploring possibilities or looking in terms of actions and goals, then they become more empowered. So it is a capacity to imagine and search. So it allows people to exercise power too. So as opposed to power over, which looks in terms of it is a static, both power to and power within looks power as dynamic. So there is no one who can hold it. Everyone can exercise, And so it is dynamic and it is infinite. There is no limit in terms of exercising power. There is fourth form of power, which looks in terms of how does this power emerges when different people come together. It's power with. So I may have power within, but if you look at in terms of if you want to exercise your power to implement actions against inequalities or explore possibilities or demonstrate your capacity, you need strength. That strength is in terms of numbers, and that numbers can only come if you can join with others, other individuals and other communities. Therefore, the power with is in terms of how do we gain mutual support, solidarity and collaboration with others who may have, who are from similar agenda, but with a different interest. So therefore you find that the individuals gain a collective strength. So it can build bridges in terms of both in terms of differences and reduce conflict. So it's a power is a shared power where each one within that group respects and recognizes the power of others. So you multiply, as we said, each individual power is inherent and each individual has power. So when you come into a power with more, which means you are sharing power. So you demonstrate your power, and then the others also will have their own skills. So you multiply the skills, the knowledge, the power that you have for a greater good, for the societal good. So this also believes in the dynamic and infinite source of power. Therefore, if you look at in terms of 4, while power over is more in terms of coercion, a domination, which always maintains, perpetuates the inequality and discrimination. The other 3, which is power 2, power within and power with, are seen more in terms of collaboration, building bridges, removing challenges, and for a greater good of individuals, communities, and the society at large. So these are 2 opposing things. Power over is seen more static and limited to certain individuals, whereas power 2, power within and power with are looked more in terms of dynamic, and then it's dispersed, it's pervasive, it exists everywhere, and it can benefit everyone. So let's look at in terms of, in the case of power that we talk about in social change in the development, is in terms of the agency of people, the capacity of people to make challenge. That's where what Helena was saying, it is in terms of the capacity to express, capacity to take spaces, occupy spaces, explore new possibilities. So therefore, what it combines is, for that change to happen is, first I recognize my own power within. Each individual, when you are in a process of development, is facilitated to recognize his own power. And that power need to be exercised. That is where we are moving to power 2. And then when you exercise, as we said, complex nature, inequality is complex, gender inequality is complex. So therefore, if you want to bring change, then you need to not only recognize and exercise, but you need to join with others. So power with others, other individuals, other groups. So harnessing who is around, who has a common interest in equality. So therefore, we are looking in terms of, when we talk about development, we are not talking about power over, we are talking about recognizing each individual, recognizing power within themselves, exercising it, and then joining with others. So such an agency can create conditions whereby power can be shared and each individual's opportunity to exercise is maximized in a larger community. Let's look at in terms of why are we talking about power in a gender inequality. There are three things that I would like you to keep in mind. One is we have seen that power is more in terms of influencing decisions of others, maintaining inequality. So therefore, when we talk about this exercise of power is between wife, male and female. So therefore, we look at gender and power are intrinsically linked. Therefore, most patterns of inequality between women and men are tied to power relationship. And we go back to our first session where we looked in terms of the building blocks of gender, the gender relations which define the status is in terms of how do men and women relate to each other, and that is determined by the power one holds. The second one, we looked into power dynamics it goes beyond the private, because this is where we are concerned with, including domestic violence. It's no more a private affair. It becomes a public thing. So therefore, these dynamics that we are talking about is going not beyond the private to public, and so it is influencing the development outcomes that we are looking in terms of. So why we talk about it is because it is so linked, and that link is reflected in the way the decisions are made. The third one is we looked in terms of what Foucault has said, and when we looked at the basics of power, it's these institutions have a role in terms of producing it, reproducing it, and distributing these power relationships. So therefore, why do we look at power in the gender equality is in terms of the relationship between the two, men and women, through the power in terms of their relationship that determine the decision making, and the institution that have a role in maintaining and sustaining this relationship. Let's look at so far how are we clear? Any questions? Yes, Mata, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Prof, and good afternoon, colleagues.
Yeah.
I think, Prof, can you again just explain to me in simple terms the concept of agency?
Yeah.
And also maybe the concept of gender and power with an example.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Martha. Anyone else? Helena?
Mine is a simple question.
Yeah.
As regards to power and authority to take up space, why is it that people who are able to express themselves before authority are referred to as rebellious?
Yeah. Thank you. Let's talk one over the other. Is in terms of agency is as I said, it's a capacity. See, that capacity believes that Everyone are capable to do it. So when there is a change, the change need not come from outside. It can come from within, inside the group. People who are suffering, people who are experiencing inequality and discrimination can make a change. How can they make a change? By using their own capacity, their own power to make a difference. So that's called the agency. Believing that the people who are experiencing problems, experiencing discrimination, inequality, taking steps to bring change in their lives. That's is agency. Is that clear, Mata? Mata?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it's clear.
So therefore,
we
it's all
normally
agency.
find,
Yeah,
they
agency.
say we normally find there's a women's agency.
Yeah,
No, when I say women agency, it
Yeah.
means now women are taking action to bring about change because of inequality.
that's yeah. So when in development, we always talk about agency of people. So if you are talking with, if you are working with the poor communities, we are talking about agency of those communities. When we are talking about women, we are talking about agency of women. So what it bottom line is, people who are experiencing inequality and discrimination, they themselves using their capacity to make a change in their lives. That's an agency. That's agency. The second question is in terms of how do we look at gender and power? Let's look at in terms of why do we want to talk about gender and power? So what are the relationship between wife and husband or male and female in the society? Is it in terms of, if you look at in terms of some of the posts, I think that the man decides what you should do, whether you can go to school, what time, what age you marry, or how you spend your income from the farming. So the decisions on the matters that is concerned to you as individual is determined by a person who is outside of you. But how does this happen? Because it's always seen within a household, you see the power in terms of the power to make decision is held with man or husband. So therefore, he can decide in terms of, he can dominate and he can influence what he thinks is good for you or what you should be doing it. That's where in terms of all decision making within the households are determined by the power relationship between women and men. So therefore you always find that to happen. The other very clear example, Mata, is violence. Who do you see violent in the
Mostly men.
Yeah. So therefore, that's one form of coercion and fear. Coercion, because you use power to undermine other people, to control other persons. So therefore, you find all rapes, either in terms of conflicts or otherwise, or within the household, is to silence your voice. One form of use is in terms of how do I exercise, and that is translated into violence. So therefore, if you look at in terms of decision making, violence and violations are always due to the power that exists. And in our society, it is in terms between rich and poor, between higher community and lower community, and between men and women. And even if you look at in terms of the people and the people with disabilities or with other gender, because how does other gender, because so far I think now I see that there is in the post you have said Botswana has cleared the LGBT. Till recently, the other gender is seen more as abnormal and seen more as a crime, though it's a natural expression of your gender identity. So therefore, in terms of how the societal power operates to control the voices of other people, and in particular, in terms of the men and women in the household and even in the public, that's where we are talking about not only this the type of roles that the woman should play is not only in terms of private but also in public. You find that the same gender roles are expected from women. And how does that happen? It's a power, because even outside, what you are expected to do is people who are in power, who are in leadership, you need to listen to them. You should only follow. Who are the people in power or in leadership? Are mostly men. So therefore, that is how we look at in terms of how gender is using power to maintain the inequality. Does it clarify, Martha?
Yes, thank you,
Yes,
Prof.
okay.
Very, very
Okay,
clear.
let's come back to in terms of rebellion. This is where Helena, we need to look at in terms of power is always when you are going for power sharing, power distribution. Because so far what is predominant is power over in the society. There are certain individuals who are holding power. And people who are holding power, it's not easy for them to give up power, to share power, to distribute power with others. So therefore, there is always, there are people who would like to challenge, and there are other people who would like to maintain. So how do they do in terms of the holding power and then restricting other people to claim that power? One is in terms of blaming them or naming them as rebellion, or you use violence to make other people to silence their thing. So rebellion is in terms of how the institutions use, or people who are in power use, when there is an opposite force, when someone is claiming that I'm holding. This is one strategy people use to blame others as rebellious. So it's something which is normal, which is not normal, because the accepting the leadership, accepting power over is what culturally you are expected to obey. So the woman is expected to obey men. So therefore, when woman challenges, it's seen more as in terms of abnormal, and then you are rebellious. Yes, Mary?
How is everybody?
Hi.
Yeah, I've been away, but I've come back. And this afternoon, I've just had a training
Good.
with 150 women.
Oh, good. Very
Yeah,
good.
and we were talking about gender-based violence.
Yeah.
I was talking to them on our cultural norms that fuel GBV and socialization. So I jokingly asked, I told them, can we be very honest? And they said yes. And I asked, how many of us have ever been slapped by their husband And out of 150 women, only one has never been beaten. 149 have been beaten. And when this one said she has never been beaten, the other women were like, no, it is not possible. You are cheating. It cannot be possible. And I asked them, why are you saying that? And they said, no, but a woman must be beaten. And these are women telling me. So at the end of the class, I believe I've created a few rebellious women. But this class, from the time I started, we started this class, I think I've been talking to women, but this is the first time that it has really touched me. Like, I think, and then I realized I had also normalized it. But today it was like, this is very abnormal. Then after the class, every woman was given a little money for transport. And one woman came and told me, can you also give me something for my husband? Because he gave me permission to come. And if I go without any money for him, he'll beat me. So you can see how deep. Yeah, you can see how deep it is. Yeah.
I think this is where I think we need to look at, because this is seen as normal, as you were saying, in terms of that violence by husband is seen normal. And so therefore, obeying what husband says or what person in authority says is normal. So therefore, anybody who is raising against that is seen as something abnormal. That abnormal is seen in people who are holding power as a rebellion. Is it rebellion, or is it only easy exercising his power to bring change, power to express? His power to express is a rebellion, is what we all need to question. Thank you, Mary. And Cynthia? Cynthia, you raised your hand?
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Morning. This particular week, it's how do I put it? It's like a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Things are coming out, and as I discuss with my sisters in community, and I talk to the women and the men that I work with, people grow up not asking questions about origins of certain things. Let me give you an example. I am a Nigerian, Igbo by tribe. Growing up, I saw the daughters, what we call Omoada, as the most powerful force in a community. The Igbos, forget about what you see in African magic, are clannish. We don't have this hierarchical government like Igwe. You see Igwe in African magic wielding uncontrolled power. It's not true. It is not our tradition. That is why sometimes I get a bit upset when I watch some of the things. Yeah, film is exaggerated, but sometimes it's good to show authentic things, to show like people who are not from that area. Okay. Now, in gender-based violence, the days as a child, I was close to my father. So I questioned and I listened and I observed. A man beats his wife in the Igbo land I come from. You will wake up early in the morning and you see the whole women in the community seated in front of your house. I'm going to translate it, okay, that is like the women literally sitting on a man, on men. And it controlled it. Because for them, the pride of a man are his wives in the polygamous setting, or when it's only one woman. So when a man goes to his clan, meeting with the men, and you mention raising your hand on your wife, the men will laugh at you and tell you you're not a real man. Now, fast forward, we are now in a culture where they think it is cultural to beat women into silence. So sometimes I wonder, where did we get all these so-called customs and tradition when they say women cannot talk, women are talking? Meanwhile, the women in their quiet way running the homes were more powerful than the men. Nigeria gained independence in 1960, but the first revolution, as it were, in Nigeria, 1929, about women's riot, when those our masters were trying to tax the women who traded, because commerce, it was the women. So sometimes when people talk now, I tell them, sometimes it's good to ask questions of what was, what we have imbibed now, what we are using as excuse to maybe cage people. Question, teach your children, let them ask questions, because at the end of the day, the man is happy, the woman is happy when there is peace, whether it is in the home or in public areas. Yes, sometimes some of the women who ask questions are treated as rebellious, even by fellow women. Our burial custom, before women started like saying no, always disfavored a widow. Your husband dies, society looks as if you killed the man. To the extent in some areas, they will wash the body of the man and make you to drink. And we're talking about without custom or tradition, it's poison, because this is something decaying. Until the women, and it is women who met out this. But there's certain women say, for crying out loud, how can you wash something dead and tell somebody living to drink it? And gradually, not throwing away completely some of those things that made us a people and kept everybody in the community in check. Those that were harmful to the community. And again, it helped each one, because I always say it is not about competition. It is actually complementarity. If you take it to religion and the creation of the man and the woman, why did God take from the rib and not from the head or from under the leg? I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, for providing this. I think we need to look at it in terms of what we believe and what we are comfortable is to follow what is there, what is already exist, normal, being normal, accepting what is there. That's where the socialization comes into place. We all made to believe that that is what is acceptable. So anything that is outside that is seen as abnormal. So abnormal is always seen in terms of is seen with suspicion, with violence, and with blaming. So we need to look at how does this come. I think is a very good question that Cynthia has made. This is where I think, Cynthia, I think we need to go back to what Anthony Gramsci was saying. It's all in terms of how people who are holding power to maintain their supremacy introduced norms that would help them to maintain that. So therefore, the custom that you are talking about, that they need to clean the dead body, is all in terms of how somebody introduced to maintain that quality relationship. And so therefore somebody is doing it. So therefore it's in terms of people over time and again, if you do, then it becomes is an acceptable practice. So nobody questions why should we do it. If somebody questions, then that person is seen as rebellion and somebody who is not concerned about her husband when he is dead. So I think this is where the socialization comes. With the socialization says is not only in terms of our transferring the messages from one generation to another generation, it also looks in terms of how to contain the challenges, how to maintain that, how to put those people, if there are the challenges, how do we overcome that? How do we restrain them? This is the constant socialization that also helps. And who does this? This is where we need to look at who does this. Is people who are forcing this to happen, and which will be right from our own house, where we would like those things to happen. Mary and then Aflin.
Yeah, but I've also what I know is that women are not comfortable with their position. They are not comfortable that they are beaten. They are not comfortable that, for example, in my community, when a husband dies, you get like the family of the man, the relatives take everything from you, your land, your property. You are also even married off by force to the
Okay. brother.
I am. And it has been done, and it's like from time immemorial, it has been done.
Yeah.
But like, the moment you get one woman rebelling, yeah, like we had one case of a woman who came and reported to our office that her land was being taken away. And we took the brothers-in-law to court, and her land was returned. After that, so many hundreds of women are now coming up. So is it like women miss that leadership? Women miss that one person who will start it off. Yeah. The moment they get one person to just lead them, you will get now many more and more women questioning. You will get more and more women questioning. And the person who has the power over another, the men who have power over another, they deep in themselves know that it is illegal to snatch land from a woman. So when the women do that, you will get like these people, the men, you know, you get them saying, you know, you are bad, you are rebellious, you are not following tradition, but they let go of the land. So we need women, more and more women to be rebellious, even if it is just one. Do it in a way, let her do it in a way that normally for me, like when I do such a case, I make sure even it goes on television, it goes on radio, and more women will repeat it. Yeah, it has worked. It works actually, but it will take some time.
Yeah, that's where I think, as you were saying, in terms of somebody has to start. And then that somebody, when started, when there are results, then others would jump. So this is where we are looking in terms, that's the social change. So in your case, what you said in terms of that one individual who went to court and then who succeeded it was able to influence others. Though they see the examples, and so therefore they gain confidence to exercise power too. That's where we are looking in terms of how do we enhance this, more and more people to exercise that power too. That's where I think what Helena earlier was saying when we looked at power is how do you encourage more and more women to express, to take space, because there are spaces available in terms of laws, in terms of institutions. How do you harness that? And that is where I think the institution that Mary, that you are running is contributing to. That's where I think we all have a role, either as NGOs or governments. How do we facilitate this process so that people who are experiencing inequality, certainly as you said, nobody would like to be unequal. Nobody like to be discriminated. Nobody would like to be excluded, certainly. But why are they accepting it? Because they see that the challenge to express has a consequence. Yes, Aflin.
Hi, good people.
Hi,
Thank you
good
so much, Prof,
Aflin, yeah.
for enlightening some areas as us as women. Now, I have a different opinion again.
Yeah.
Because as women, we are the enemies of all the progresses. I'll take, for example, I have a case just the way my sister has just mentioned there. I take the case to the court, it is settled to my favor. The same people who are coming back now to be against me are the same women. So at the same time, we need to understand our role as women, and we need to stand by each other as women, irrespective of our cultures, irrespective of our status, so that we can, this voice can be spoken out and men can also fear us. Because as we see, worldwide, women are the majority. But again, gender-based violence are affecting only women, mostly. So if we change the narrative of us being enemies of our own selves,
Yeah.
then the nation will be different.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Afina. That was very powerful. Where are you from, Afina? Afline?
Sorry,
Where are you from, Aflin?
I'm from Kenya.
See, I think you rightly said in terms of narrative, when how is this narrative coming? That's where I go back to socialization. In terms of
Yes.
even saying this, women are enemies for women, is also is a narrative that is being built by the socialization. Because
Yes.
we all need to look at in terms of that's where the institutions play a role. Because they how do they perpetuate? How does the institution perpetuate? It's only through people, and through people
Yeah,
means through the families, through the households. So the men
Yes.
continue to exercise, and the women continue to support, because anything other than that is seen as different. So therefore, they are being used there because they have been socialized to believe that they should not accept. So we need to look at in terms of why are women doing this? Not because they are not interested, but because they are taught to believe that they should obey, and they should ensure that this practice continues.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm bringing it up
Yeah.
is because
Yeah.
this narrative that men are the head of the family.
Yeah.
So most of us women, we've been brainwashed that men are the head of the family irrespective of what we're doing. Whether bad or good, we still have to bow down to the authority. So those who have been
Thank you, Alfin. Paul, I saw Paul raising.
Yes.
Paul and yeah, yes, Paul.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Greetings to everyone.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Botswana.
Botswana. Yes, Paul. Yes.
Yes. I wanted to say we live in a male-dominated world.
Yeah.
So for us women, we should find our allies. Like today, majority of men, they believe in the equal rights of women, especially in the workplace. So these are the people that you should be tapping from, like using them, so that they can spread the message. That's my point. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Revoy.
Greetings to you all.
Revoy, where are you from?
Mozambique.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a very good discussion.
Yeah.
And when we are talking of development, we need to consider women. They are the ones who bring the much development, like you was seeing, working with the community development programs. Why I'm saying so, women, they have got they participate very well in some of the programs, because sometimes men, they just come and just to see if there is something that they benefit on their own. But women, they look what they will benefit the community or the country at large. I just want to give an example that I've seen on like the president of Tanzania. She banned independence celebrations, of which it was something which was like a funny thing, but me, when I was analyzing it, I've seen it's something which is good, because the money that they were using in one day, it was a lot of money. But she suggests that we need to build schools, clinics, and the like, so that everybody will benefit. I think there are very few women that can have that mind, or few men that can have that mind. But if you put a woman in front and have a passage, who have developed communities where everyone will be having a chance to develop. of course, in some societies, women are still suppressed so that they cannot give up their minds, but they are the people who I can see. I'm a man, but I can see, wow, women are very good at making things to happen. If you look like a chicken can keep its chicks, fight for the chicks, so that the chicks will survive. But sometimes men, I think we have gotten hardened heart, so that we are just having the feeling that because we are men. But everybody, whether a woman, whether a man, is a person. So when I was reading this module concerning about power and the like, then I said, wow, sometimes it's very good that us men, we need to put much power into women so that we have got much development in this world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to look at it in terms, how do we deconstruct this power over? I think that's where I would see, Levi, I think you have been saying in terms of, yeah, how, because this is where we have been using it, power over, and masculine power is seen more as a power over. We'll come to that in a few minutes. And that's where we need to look at how do we deconstruct that? How do we reverse that norm in terms of that you can only show your power through domination and control. We'll come back. I think let's move. I think we move forward. Mary and Cynthia, if I can ask you, if you have any other comments.
It's okay. Yeah, I wanted just maybe to respond to what my sister had said about women being their own enemies.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Women being their own enemies is a form of socialization.
Yeah.
Because from the time you were born, you were taken at home, in the home, in the school, everywhere. They made you feel inferior.
Yeah.
They made you feel subordinate. So it's not something like these women that we believe are our enemies. This woman who will oppose me being a leader actually is a woman who needs help because she's a woman who hates herself. Today I was asking women like, when I'm a woman and I have daughters and the other woman has sons, why is it that I feel inferior that I have daughters and yet these daughters are women? I am a girl and I feel like I am useless without sons. It is all about, we have been socialized to hate ourselves. We've been socialized to see ourselves like we are not able, So if I'm feeling like I've been trained like I cannot lead, there is no way I can view another woman like she can lead.
Yeah.
So it is a form of socialization that we need to remove women from.
Yeah.
It's not like they are our enemies, like we are our own enemies. It is like colonization. Their minds have been colonized. That's what I wanted just to respond.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. Okay, let's move to the Cynthia. You want to share? Yes, Cynthia. And then we need to move forward. Yeah.
I want to take from the point you said about how do we rewrite this narrative.
Yeah.
Change is not easy for those of us who are adults.
Yeah.
But change is easy for the upcoming generation.
Yeah.
I agree with the last speaker.
Yeah.
We have been brought up with a particular mindset. Luckily, we are being made aware of what the possibilities are. Let me use that language. Now, it is us who can be these agents of rewriting this narrative by how we bring up our children in the home. By how, I am a reverend sister, I don't have biological children, but to the glory of God, I have had children pass through me over the years. I'm in a school community, even though I'm not a teacher there, it's a co-ed, where responsibilities are equally shared. That is one way that we can start rewriting these narratives, because the world has changed. A lot has changed in the world. COVID has also given us opportunity to rewrite certain things. And this thing about a wounded healer, our women who are broken, a girl of 14 who becomes a mother and never had help, becomes a grandmother. She doesn't agree with you. You are talking about a wounded woman who doesn't even know, who was never helped when she was supposed to have been helped. So we now, who are privileged to have had these formations wherever we are, in whichever settings we are, we can begin with the ones coming behind us to tell them, no, this is not proper. You do this, irrespective of whether you are boy or girl. In the next 10 years, we will be reaping, we are going to see a different generation of people who respect human persons, whether male or female or whatever. That's my own, that is the only way. For those who are already in socialization, stereotype, the mindset, I agree with the speaker who says something about looking for those who are, will I say, sympathetic, or people, especially our brothers, our husbands, those who know that this is not right. We get them on our side. They are also agents of rewriting this narrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, MG. I think I agree with you in terms of, I think rebellion is not an acceptable thing. Is, I think, standing up. I think people challenging. I think I fully agree with you. Let's move forward. I think in terms of how do all this what we discussed about power, moving to in terms of how the feminists look at power, approach to power. As we said, in terms of the feminists see power is dynamic and that it is a resource to be shared and distributed and redistributed, because it cannot be held, it cannot remain with an individual or with a group, it has to be distributed. And power is seen more as a male domination. That's where they target the patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system that organizes society based on assertion of male supremacy and female subordination. So it looks in terms of power over, they not only talk about power over, but it is unjust and illegitimate. So their own thing is in terms of two things that we need to look at. I think they target that the power need to be redistributed. But the second one, they target that the patriarchy, which is a system that reinforces the male domination and women's subordination. Therefore, they are concerned about the patriarchy is a reflection of power over of men over women, with this male domination and subordination. So therefore, the feminist looks at power more as an empowerment which looks in terms of people recognize their power, they share their power, they distribute their power so that they can challenge the patriarchy, the male domination and female. So that's the perspective we need to look at. One, it looks in terms of power as a dynamic source that can be used, spread and distributed. The second one, it looks in terms of the centrality of this power challenge must be on patriarchy, which reinforces the male domination and female subordination. So therefore, it looks in terms of conflict model, where it looks at examining the gender roles, which are reinforcement of the gender. This is where I think we need to go back. I keep on saying we need to go back to those three building blocks of gender inequality: gender norms, gender roles, and gender relations. So therefore, feminist looks in terms of gender roles, which are a reflection of reinforcement of gender inequalities. So therefore, it looks in terms of power from the point of the gender roles. The second one, it critiques the gender-based relations. That's where we go back in terms of gender relations. We looked at relation, the way the men and women need to be relating to each other, that is determining the status of men and women based on the power each one exceeds. And so this is where we need to bring in terms of intersectionality. Intersectionality is in terms of the other forms of expression, because it's not only women. If you look at the woman, if they are from the other gender, other identity, woman, but may identifying herself as a man, or in terms of woman with a disability, or woman coming from a particular section of the community which is vulnerable, or women living with HIV. These are all the vulnerable situation. Each one of them have got an axis of oppression. Therefore, there is discrimination and exploitation is not unilinear. There are multiple, and different axes are used to discriminate or dominate women. So therefore, it looks in terms of how the gender relations, how gender intersectionalities affect these gender relations of subordination. The third one, I've been saying in terms of its central question is on patriarchy, which maintains the oppression of women. And it looks in terms of the gender differences, which gives certain privileges, certain rights, certain advantages to one gender over the other. And the last one is the mode of production, which is central, because that is if you look at in terms of when we looked in terms of the basics of power, power is in terms of it exists in social relationship and through an economic transaction. So therefore, feminists believe that then we need to review the modes of production which alienates women, because the man holds and controls the means of production. And so therefore it's a source of oppression. So we need feminists, while they believe their own approach, they looked in terms of that this can only be changed unless there is we challenge them. So it looks in terms of how does that challenge is examining the gender roles that which promotes gender inequality, looks at gender relationships, looks at patriarchy, the gender differences, and the means of production. So challenging, critiquing this, examining this to bring change. So based on that, their reconceptualizing power is from capacity to empower oneself and others, power to exercise agency, and transforming through individual and collective resistance, and alternative to masculine notions of power over with domination. This is where I think Revia was talking about this, and we have been talking about the narrative. The narrative is that the masculine power that is more in terms of power over with domination and control. So that narrative need to change. We need to deconstruct that narrative. So we need to find alternative notions of power. That alternative notions of power is power to, that is exercising, power within and power with. So therefore, feminist looks at power of critiquing the gender roles, gender relations and differences, and there's a capacity to bring change, power to exercise, and transforming through collective strength. So feminists believe that you can challenge the patriarchy, bring change through collective resistance, and finding an alternative notions of power. So there are guiding principles. One, it looks in terms of gaining dignity and freedom for all forms of discrimination, shift in power, because at the moment they are in the powerless position. Though they have power within, they are not exercising that power over. So therefore, how do we enable, facilitate them to recognize their power within and exercising power to, and harnessing power to challenge the unjust gender relations to achieve gender equality. So it's more in terms of addressing human rights, gaining dignity, shifting in position from powerlessness to challenging the gender relations, concerned with the status of women, where it will give them with skills to make decisions. We have been talking about that one of the major area that keeps them subordinate is the decision making. So participation in decision making that concerns them to redefine the gender roles and increase their autonomy to make decisions. Looks in terms of collective resistance to challenging cultural patterns, and looks at participation as an empowering process. So the principles are that women's empowerment must deal with the dignity of women, exercising freedom, shift in positions, rising status of women through collective resistance and participation. So they conceptualize women's empowerment from 4 core elements, which they have been deprived or denied so far. One is in terms of options. So therefore, it looks in terms of conceptualizing women empowerment to enable women to explore alternatives, make decisions that affect their outcomes, making choices, ability to define what is their interest and what are their strategic choices, which were denied to them earlier, to challenge the gender inequality. The control over their own life resources and altering power, which constrain women's empowerment. So therefore, when we talk about women's empowerment, are empowering women to make change in their own situation, it need to look at in terms of what options they would explore, what choices that they can make, what control they gain, and what power they would alter in the household, between wife and husband, and in the society, both at the private and public spheres. So therefore, their concern is in terms of the human rights and social justice, examining what barriers exist in terms of cultural norms that maintain the unequal power relations. How do we transform them? So it looks in terms of human rights, it looks in terms of how to transform the norms and gender relations, both in private and public. And it looks in terms of addressing the structures and the processes of patriarchy. And then the inherent contradictions in gender relations and consciousness of injustice. So recognizing their capacity and challenge. So therefore, when the feminists conceptualize women's empowerment, they looks in terms of within the human rights approach, transforming the gender roles and relations, addressing the structures that perpetuate the gender inequality with a capacity to challenge the gender injustice. So therefore, what's approach and the strategy that they have is certainly in terms of it is a human rights based approach. The second one is you need to look at in terms of pedagogy. Pedagogy is in terms of that where they gain critical consciousness of the existing situation. I think some of us may be aware of Paulo Freire, who introduced this critical consciousness and pedagogy. So therefore, women's empowerment, they believe in methodology that helps women to critically become conscious of the existing realities to bring change in the way they have been discriminated or inequality maintained. So it looks in terms of gender strategic needs, looks at economic education, because economic and education are seen as two important areas through which the woman's subordination is maintained in terms of depriving their access to economic and education. That's where we see in terms of the men dominating in terms of whether access, allowing women to access education or gaining control over the resources. The fourth one is decision making. How more women increase their participation in decision making. Reduction in violence. We have seen, I think, how predominant is violence, because there are studies after studies which said that more than 2/3 of women have experienced violence from their intimate partners in the last 1 year. And as we have been saying, it's Mary's own example of this recent training, there is no woman who would have been out of these violations. Influencing policy reforms to promote gender equality and revolutionizing the economy, dismantling this productive and reproductive work, masculinity and femininity, this gender binary. So the women's empowerment looks at these areas. So therefore, how do we translate the power that we have looked, the concept of power, into the feminist approach to power, and then their way of looking at that understanding of power to women's empowerment is to enable women to gain their position and raising their status through building options, choices, and control, and through the approach and strategy that revolves around the human rights, and that raises critical consciousness to improve their autonomy and status. That's why we have looked in terms of concept of power, locating power within gender inequality, and looked in terms of different expressions of power, and look at what is agency of that we are talking about within gender equality, that recognizes power within, exercises power to, and harnesses power within to optimize individual skills and opportunities for greater good. And within that, we looked in terms how the feminist looks in terms of power, and then how that power, conceptualization power, is translated into the perspective and approach and strategies of women's empowerment. I will end at this, and then I will look for comments. I'll stop the screen so that I can see people. Yeah, any comments? Yes, Veronica.
Oh, yeah, good,
Sorry.
good evening.
Yes. Yes, Veronica.
Please explain about pedagogy. I think I have not understood pedagogy.
Yeah. See, pedagogy is a methodology of awareness, of knowledge building, which looks in terms of the adult's way of learning. Because there is a child way of learning, adult's way of learning. Adult's way of learning is experiential, because they have their own experience, their own wisdom. So using that wisdom, how do you bring critical awareness? Is in terms of using the existing issues existing problems, and around those problems, building knowledge, building awareness. That's what the pedagogy. Pedagogy is using the existing knowledge and through that building awareness. So therefore, if you look at Paulo Freire is the person who advocated this pedagogy, is in terms of, that's where I think the visual comes into effect, because adults get learn faster when they see. One is in terms of most of them are illiterates, therefore you use visuals, videos or pictures on issues which are common in the area, build discussions, and then move forward in terms of, it could be only one in terms of education, or if one wanted to build literacy, it will be literacy will be built on the actual practical cases. Veronica, is that
Thank
clear?
you. Thank you. That is very, very, very clear.
Okay,
And finally, does the feminist approach to women's rights have limitations?
If you say there is no limit, the only limitation is in terms of how people look at feminism. Feminism is not in terms of men hating. Feminism is more in terms of believing in equal relationships. So it also believes that like women are suffering from the gender roles and norms and relations, it also believes that men also suffer from that. So it is the socialism that if you are saying that men don't cry, but they would like to cry. If you say that don't use your power, they would be ostracized. They would be seen as, they will be belittled. So therefore they are afraid of those social sanctions. So the gender roles and norms, feminists believe it is not only harmful to women, it's also harmful to men. So therefore it looks in terms of how men and women can be equal. It is not talking about that women should be on top and men should be at lower, which will be is what it is now in terms of men dominating and women subordinating. They are not talking about opposite of that. They are talking about equalizing in terms of that man's power comes down and women's power goes up, so that there is an equality between the two. That's the major obstacles or barrier that feminists may feel. But I think what is important is in terms of, also there are feminists who believe in different approaches, and one approach which is mostly is seen is in some conflict approach, which is it targets the patriarchy, and then therefore it is in terms of what methodology you use to challenge. That is the only limitation that you need to look at. If the conflict is the only solution, or is it a deconstructing it through a pedagogy that you can use so that it is non-threatening, but at the same time, it is challenging the existing structures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Where are you from, Veronica?
I'm from Kenya.
Okay, Veronica. Aflin, Mesejo, and Jackia.
Thank you, Professor, for this space again. I just wanted to comment on how to eradicate the violence against women.
Yeah.
It is true again that if we find a way of getting the policy in regards to women space, and again, I'm thinking that us who are now in the know-how, women that are now empowered, we can start small in our villages or in areas that we are, where women are marginalized, so that we can empower them either by giving them encouragement on what to do Because one thing that I've realized, for us to be marginalized is because when we are denied resources. But when a woman is empowered, slowly that decision-making table becomes easier for her. So from our perspective, it is my thinking that if we can start small, as much as we are dealing with the government also to make it into policy, but even us, we start small as a wild bushfire and it will spread. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Alfina. That's very well said. I think that's what that's the spirit that which we need to move. We can make a difference. We can start small, but that small can gain momentum. I think. Well, very well said, Flynn. Messaggio, Jackia, and then Peggy.
Thank you. I think I just wanted to say that I think it's very, very important to say that as we are talking about, gender awareness and so forth, gender equality, we also really, in our, discussions, we also, or even in whatever activities we are carrying out, we also really try to listen to men. For instance, I think in one of the comments here, somebody said that, when we are discussing like this, we are just focusing on, the physical violence that women go through, but we don't talk about, the emotional, abuse that men also go through. So really, I think we need to be very, very careful, because as long as we, men think that we are biased and we are just concentrating on women, we are not raising issues that, men are experiencing, it will be, difficult for us to come together. And yes, I know that the reason why we do that is because the women are the ones that are more, disadvantaged. But for us to be able to even to gain support, from men, so that they also come out, they really need to understand. We need to make them understand that this is not just about women. We are against inequality, discrimination, wherever we see it. So I think we need to bring out, issues that men go through, so that they also feel that they are included is in this gender thing. Because like here in Botswana, you find that I think really there's a lot that has happened in trying to bring up the status of women, so much that, in terms of education and so forth, a lot of women are educated and no longer that dependent, on men. But what we are seeing now is a lot of these passion kills when women try to come up and talk about, like we were talking about what is it called? Where people come out to talk about the gender inequalities, even in the relationships, to say, no, I think, then there's a lot of, passion, what I call passion killings here. And sometimes I wonder whether we also need to be emphasizing even, the communicate, empowering women by giving them, communication skills, so that really they know how to express this, so that they don't create, a conflict. Because most of the time people are dealing with this in their homes. And, communication is very, very vital if we are to succeed in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Messaggio. I think you have said very well in terms of, I think, how do we look at men, involve men, and more importantly, you were also saying that how we also include in our discussion the men's perspective, men's issues. I think that's very well said. I think in terms of conflict, somewhere my own belief, message, anything that you challenge the existing status quo is a conflict. Whether we say it or not, it is bound. There is bound to be a conflict. But how do you look at that conflict is something that we need to prepare both men and women in terms of anything, any challenge to the status quo is in terms of resistance. There will be always be a resistance because there is a status quo would like to maintain is good in terms of keeping it as it is. But if you want to challenge that, then conflict is bound to come. Jackie and then Peggy.
Thank you very much for a wonderful session. Power with easy relation to a person's sense of self-worth and self-knowledge. It include an ability to recognize individual difference while respecting others' power. With involved people have a sense of their own capacity and self-worth. Empowered women and girls contribute to the health and reproductive of their families, community, and countries, creating a ripple effect that benefit everyone.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. And then Peggy, I think yours will be the last. Peggy. Yes, Peggy, go ahead. Peggy, go ahead, please. Hello. Peggy, are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Finally, I think my speaker had disappeared. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just wanted to share that I really enjoyed today's lesson. Not that the others were not enjoyable, but I enjoyed the talk about power.
Thank you.
We relate power.
Yeah.
And especially that we should realize, both men and women and others, that power is infinite. That when you share the power, it doesn't mean anything is taken away from you. You still have it.
Yeah.
So similarly, when we are working with men in this fight of gender-based violence, we have to be working with men as allies. They have to come on board. They have to know that we are not taking any power away from them. They still have that power. All we are saying is that we should be equal so that we are together at decision making. And that at the end of the day, the whole world will be better off as the women will become part of development. They will be inputting into the wealth of the country. The world is losing out on half of the population that could be contributing to development. This is all that the feminist theory is saying, that we should all come to the table and put our heads together and acknowledge each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. I think with that wonderful note, we can end for today, and we'll meet on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Sorry we went beyond the time, but your own participation, that is more important. Thank you very much. Once again, see you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.